All right, guys, I think we'll just get started. So today we're going to talk about the Wheel of Life, which is a really fundamental tool in coaching. Many coaches use it at some point or another with a client. And it's really good at sort of bringing a visual picture of where in your life things are not up to par. And sometimes you'll see even on the wheel that certain categories that are out of balance correspond with another category that is either sort of above the balance or equally low. So sometimes these things have connections, and a visual like this can help bring those to the surface. So I have a few slides I'm going to share, but before we do that, I want to go around and do introductions. So I'll start with myself. My name is Emily Abbott. I am an intuitive life coach, PCC accredited with ICF, and a graduate of Ilkate Academy. I also am a student liaison and mentor inside of our 7-month academy program. I'm really excited to be here tonight and sharing this with all of you. I really love to build our community and see engagement and participation, especially from new participants. So yeah, I'm really looking forward tonight, and I would love to talk to some of the viewers watching this later if they're interested in talking about what it is they're looking for and how we can best support them. So if you want to do that, we can share the Clarity Call link with you in the chat. And let's go through and introduce everyone else. Damaris. All right, so I want to ask before we go over the Wheel of Life and kind of look at the slides, has anyone done this before? Whether for themselves or for a client, has anyone experienced the Wheel of Life before for themselves? I know Sana has. Tere, okay. Marita has, great. All right, cool. So this will be the first time for some of you, and for the rest of you, the three of you that have tried it, I'd be curious to see if anything shows up differently than maybe the last time you did it. Maybe you don't remember, but I'd be curious to see if anything sticks out. All right, I'm going to share my screen and show you. So what is the Wheel of Life? Like I said before, it's a visual tool that we can use to bring awareness to the areas in our life that are not balanced. A lot of the times, one area that might seem fulfilling can correspond with an area that maybe is lacking. And that's really interesting to see because in some areas you might feel like I'm doing great, everything's fine, but there might be a cost for that, right? And so this helps us to see how we can bring that into balance. And it also brings awareness to small action steps we can take to bring those areas back into balance. And so in this wheel, I have 8 sections. We have friends, finances, career, physical environment, recreation and fun, spirituality and faith, family, and physical fitness. And just to note as well, you can tailor this for yourselves or for your clients, however you feel comfortable. Some of the other topics we might add here are romance or self-care. And if there's any others that you can think of that you might add, please put it in the chat. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. So like I said before, sometimes we'll feel really great about one area of our life and we neglect the others. And sometimes it's hard to see that. So this Wheel of Life, again, really brings that visual to life and allows us to see that right in front of our faces. So there's no more confusion. We can't ignore it at that point. It's right there in front of our faces. And I really like this analogy I found somewhere. When the wheel is unbalanced, it's harder to roll or move forward smoothly, right? Imagine like a flat tire, you're just bumbling down the road. It also doesn't mean that everything is perfect. If everything's balanced, it just means that you're aligned and supported in the areas that matter the most. So for some of you, I'll go back. For some of you, maybe something on this chart is not that important to you, and that's okay too. All right. So today we're all going to have the chance to fill out our own Wheel of Life and see what our unique wheel looks like. We'll look at the different connections between these life areas and what that means for you. And then we'll work on identifying one small shift that can create a ripple effect in the entire Wheel of Life for yourself. And hopefully you'll leave with a clear practical action step that you can use right after this session. So before we move into the exercise, I want to know, does anyone have any questions, any thoughts, anything to add? So we're going to take...
Emily, a question, just...
Yeah, Jim, please.
Question. Are we going to be sharing our results?
You don't have to. You don't have to. I would like to ask for some volunteers afterwards, but you don't have to. Cool. I know you've shared a lot with us already, Jim, in the last 7 months. No pressure. All right, so let's take 7 minutes. Let's see, what time is it? It's 8:10. So let's say at 8:18, I'll come back and we will, like I said, kind of go over anything that sticks out, anything that surprises you. And then maybe if someone is open to it, we can go through an individual wheel of life as well. And so the best way to do this might be to just draw it on a piece of paper, or you can screenshot it and do it on your computer in whatever way works for you. All right, we have about 2 more minutes. If you need more time, feel free to continue working after the 2 minutes is up, and we'll just move on to hopefully sharing with each other for those that have finished. All right, I think we're ready to come back. I first want to ask, for those of you that have done this in the past, did anything really stick out to you? Anything drastically different from maybe the last time you did this?
Not drastically different, but definitely it's like a reality check
Mm,
with our own lives and where we should be working on and what are areas that maybe we have thought that are not moving on so good and maybe they are better than expected. So it's like a reality check.
yeah, for sure. It's a great tool to use periodically, not just like one time in your life. Really, I might recommend using it like a few times a year or even once a month if you're really serious on getting aligned. All right, so did anything, for maybe the people who haven't done this before, did anything stick out at you? Was anything surprising? Any new discoveries through doing the Wheel of Life?
Yeah, I was going to say that what I did was I made a list. I'm kind of a list guy, so broke out all the 8 areas and then kind of did a 1 to 10 scale on each one, with a couple of caveats. So for me, one area in particular that sort of really stands out as something that needs some work is the recreation and fun. So it's like careers, everything's going more or less okay. But like recreation and fun was a low one for me, and I think that's a function of the other ones being higher. So there's
Hmm.
less time and there's less energy to do those things. So I think that I can kind of see, I guess the bottom line is the relationship between the various areas. So something gets weaker because other things are stronger.
Absolutely. And if you could pinpoint, or if you're able to, Dave, are there certain areas on this wheel that really contribute to the low score you feel with recreation and fun?
Uh,
The culmination, you think of all of them.
it's kind of a deep conversation, but I think like certain things I've gotten more into. I mean, like career for me has been a transitional thing. I did Navy, I did corporate, I did startups, I did it all. And now it's like I'm going into coaching and healing and all that. So that's positive, but learning about all these things and being involved and studying and going to class and all of that combined does take time away. But I
Mm,
also think it shifts because of what it is. It shifts away from things for me in the past that maybe were fun.
mm,
Going out, meeting people, doing things. I'm not as excited about that stuff and more excited about digging into this and figuring out how to be a coach, how to be a better coach, that type thing. So I think they're kind of like maybe it's a shift in priorities that leaves something in the dust, so to speak, for me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, and something that kind of stuck out to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds like, you're so focused in this career transition, and I think that culminates as well with your spiritual growth. Um, but the recreation and fun, it almost sounds like you're kind of trying to figure out what that looks like now, right? Because you're transforming in so many ways, and what was fun before maybe isn't now, and it sounds like you've got to figure out what fun looks like now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In fact, that's been kind of a theme of late. Is I'm a different person than I was 2 years ago, and what does that mean, and what's normal and what's not. So there's a lot of self exploration within the self exploration, if that makes sense. As things evolve, um, just for example, I might enjoy sitting home and reading a book on a Friday night and not going out, for example. I mean, again, and have just as good a time or better. So
Yeah,
it is determining what looks better, what feels better rather, versus what maybe was standard in the past.
for sure. Thank you so much for sharing, Dave. Doretha?
Yes, I was interested in the revelation to myself that there's a connection between my low score for physical fitness and my almost low score for recreation and fun, because I can't do a lot of things for recreation and fun if I'm not in good shape physically. So that's a lesson that I learned, and I value that, and I'll work on it.
Very cool. Very cool. So it sounds, Doretha, like this visual for you just brought something right to the forefront that probably has been lingering there as a theme in your life, but you couldn't quite put a finger on it.
I didn't put the two together. When I was
Yeah.
dealing with one, it was in isolation.
Mm,
And so I see a connection now that I can work on.
very cool. Thank you for sharing that, Doretha. Joe?
Yeah, I like the idea about the balance and how the wheel sort of will be wobbly if it's kind of out of shape and you have more emphasis in one area versus another. For with me, I think I kind of resonate with people. Physical fitness is used to be very high years ago when I was in the military myself, and now it's not quite as much. And I'm trying to make the turn to kind of put more emphasis on that, knowing that I'm not going to be on this planet forever. So, if you don't have your health and your physical fitness, and when I think of physical fitness, I think of health as well as just as exercise. Then you lose a lot, and I think that's definitely an area that needs more emphasis. I'm not a religious person at all, but I do feel like I have spirituality. I really believe in the goodness of people, and I think that sort of drives a lot of what I do, and just being kind to people is important. So, but I could see that, maybe a little bit more balance in that area. That's kind of the reason why I'm doing the talk that I'm doing next week, because it's kind of it's sort of my own journey. And but I'm retired, as some of you may know, and so when I put X on the career, I was a little confused about that. So like, what is that? I mean, my career is being retired, I suppose, but I'm doing things for fun, like taking this course here, and it might turn into something that will be monetized. But my guess is that I probably will do that, as a side gig. Um, but it's very interesting to kind of look at how things are sort of balanced in this retrospect. I do have a question though.
Please.
One of the things that I know that we coaching techniques is that we like to use scales, right? From a
Mhm.
scale of 1 to 10, how would you say your day is going today, for example? And if the client says 7 or 8, your next question might be, well, what would it take to get to a 10?
Mhm.
Or if you're at a 1, what would it take to get to a 2? So it wouldn't sound like so crazy. So my question is, what do people think? And we don't have to have an answer here, but I just kind of think it's interesting. What would it take to get to a 10 on any one of these things to do? And maybe that's a perspective to look at with this wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. So if everyone's done sharing, we're actually going to move into doing an exercise, probably like a one-on-one kind of deal. We might have time actually to do it 2 or 3 times even. But that's exactly kind of what we'll be looking into is how can we bring those areas into more balance. And Joe, thank you for sharing all of that. I see that you shared your wheel in the chat, and overall it looks pretty close to balanced. I think definitely in comparison to some wheels maybe I've seen, which is a testament, right, to the work you've been doing and to how aware you are of yourself. And even I think your talk next week will sort of reveal how maybe that came to be. So like you said, it looks like there's some areas you feel called to improve in, but overall, this general balance that you shared is really great. Patricia, were you trying to add to the conversation?
Yes.
Okay, please.
This is very interesting. Thank you for, I don't know why didn't my hand go up?
I'm not sure. I saw you start to talk a
Yeah.
minute ago. Yeah.
I don't know why it didn't either. Well, I'm on a virtual background, so maybe that's it. But
Yeah.
anyway, yes, I have done this before. But what I'd like to say is it is really confirming where I am in my life right now. Um, my family and my spiritual faith, all tens. But my friends, I'm going through a major transition time right now that the people that were what I called friends before doesn't mean that we don't like each other. It just means that we don't have common things like we used to. So I'm transitioning in that. And recreation, I'm not doing as much of that because the friends has shifted, and my physical environment and my career and my finances are all just okay, a five. So, and I am in major transition, not only in my career, but in my life. But it confirmed I'm ready to move on.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, it sounds like you've been making a lot of shifts, and I think it's common when you're making a lot of changes and shifts, sort of like how Dave shared, when
Yes,
things are shifting and changing, things are bound to start falling out of balance. Um,
yes.
and that's a great time to check in with the Wheel of Life. So I'm glad you're here today to see
I
that.
am a coach, but I'm taking it from the typical coach to an intuitive coach. That's why I'm on here.
Ah, very good, very good. Well, thank you for joining us, Patricia, and thank you for sharing that. All right, so I want to see if anyone might be interested in actually sharing with me, telling me the numbers they rated each section of their Wheel of Life. All right, Dave, let's do it.
Get my mute off here. So the first one, friends, I put that at 9 out of 10. If does that work? The scaling model?
Yeah.
Okay.
So each of these rings is like 1 through 10. So I'm just gonna fill it in. And I'm so sorry for the juvenile way I'm doing this, but I think it will still work.
And then finances, I put 8 out of 10. It's good enough. I mean, it's not, again, part of these shifts make things not as important and other things more important. Career, I put 8 out of 10. Physical environment, where I live, kind of like, I live in DC. I'm not a huge fan of the city, but I like where I live in the city and the kind of things around me. So I put that at 9 out of 10. Let's see, fun and recreation, I put that at 4 out of 10. So that one's that's the outlier. And then faith, spirituality, I put 9. And family, how I define it, which is a combination of friends and relatives, I put that at an 8. And physical fitness, I put that at an 8. So there's one in there that just falls off, just kind of like that one needs a lot of tender loving care.
Yeah, definitely. So looking at this visual, right? Everything is pretty close to imbalance. There might be some small changes you can make to really bring them right into balance with each other. But recreation and fun is definitely lacking. We can see that. What I'd be curious to know, are any of our other students or graduates interested in maybe helping Dave kind of explore what it might look like to incorporate more recreation and fun. And I think the goal here would be just to help him come up with maybe an actionable step that he can take today to help maybe start to bring that into balance. All right, Joe?
Well, the thing that jumps out at me, Dave, is that you're pretty high with friends
Mm.
and actually not too bad with physical fitness. How can that be leveraged to sort of fill the gap in recreation and fun? Or are you thinking something more, you're kind of a loner, or things that you would do for yourself by yourself?
Oh, wow. That's a good question, Joe. I would say that for me, maybe I'm defining recreation and fun as kind of a past life, like a past version of me. And I find that the people that I used to spend a lot of time with and do stuff with that are physically in my location, I just don't have as much interest in hanging out with. Friends that I have that I can talk to for 3 hours on the phone type thing, they're in other places in the country and other places in the world. So it's kind of a thing of where I'm very close to people, but not as close to people that are near me. Fitness for me is I get up every morning and I walk a pretty massive distance, usually very early, and that's very solitary for me. That's when I think a lot, and for me, it's a combination of physical and mental health. Um, so I enjoy that a lot. That's fun for me, but because it's a separate category, if we didn't have that fitness category, I might have a higher number in recreation and fun. But I put my eggs in the fitness category. But as far as my operating system, yeah, I'm very much a loner. I do spend a lot of time alone, and that isn't bad, but there's a certain threshold with that, I believe, that you have a great time, it's relaxing, it's peaceful, you're able to read or think or work on a project or whatever it is. But it only gets you to a certain level on this wheel. Maybe the highest you get to, if you're just doing alone type things, maybe it's a 6 or 7. It depends on the person. So I think it's a combination of past events changing with and evolving, my own self just evolving into something else that hasn't quite figured out, as Emily pointed out, hasn't quite figured out what recreation and fun looks like. I don't think I have an answer to that right now.
Tara, I see you have your hand raised. I just want to make sure, Joe, did you have anything you wanted to follow up with on that?
Yeah.
No, I think
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that Dave, I think Dave is hitting on something really important about defining what recreation and fun is. And that's one thing about this wheel. Of course, it's tailored to everyone. So everyone has their own scale, and, 4 for somebody might be a 6 for someone else, but the way you define each of these things is different. It's fascinating. Thanks.
Tara?
Thank you, Emily. I'm sorry, Joe, for interrupting you. I was gonna say more or less what you were saying at the end, that maybe you can focus on it should be focused on your satisfaction with the area, how satisfied you are with your recreation and fun part of your life. Maybe since you are more of a loner, you will find more fun reading a book or getting out or walking on the park or going for a bicycle ride by yourself, and not so much about the things that we used to enjoy 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But life goes on and life changes, and we change as life goes on. So it may be just how satisfied you feel with what you have now and what you can do to raise that satisfaction, to increase that satisfaction for yourself.
Tara, that's a really interesting point you make, and you got me thinking about something. It's almost like within each category could be subcategories. And again, I use the analogy of like going into a party with loud music and everybody drinking heavily was fun when I was 23. Now that the age I am now, I don't want to get in the room with the loud music, and it's sort of like we change, but those categories, maybe looking at components of them and saying, okay, you know what, a bike ride might be pretty awesome, and it's not necessarily requiring too much other than just having a bike or access to a bike. That's kind of the idea, I think. Maybe that's just something that's kind of dawning on me now a little bit, is breaking these categories down even further and analyzing what things inside of them might be valuable to look at as far as activities. Thank you.
Very cool. Marita?
Hi there.
Hi, Marita.
Hi. So I have listening to what Joe and Terry were asking you, and what struck me was you were saying that you go for walks, for long walks. And so I was thinking about it. Have you ever thought to see the walks as a recreational and a fun part of your life? And not just as a walk, but something that you enjoy doing, because there's a reason why you're doing this.
Yeah, that's a good point. And honestly, I really do enjoy it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I get up every morning. I'll get up super early before everyone's up. You know, it's like whatever time, like 5:30, sometimes 6 in the morning, and I'll go walk for 2 hours around the city. And the reason there is it's like I'm thinking while I'm walking, and I try not to distract myself with too much. So I don't have music, I don't have podcasts, or I'm just thinking and in my mind about things that are, you know, important things I need to kind of process. So it's sort of like kind of like mental health, and it's sort of spiritual, and it's kind of meditative in a way, and it's a lot of different things. I never really think of it as recreation and fun though.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of recreation and fun, in my own definition, I think about groups of people or activities that involve other people. Trying out a new restaurant with a group of friends or something like that. I don't. Maybe it's my own definition of it in my mind that's blocking me a little bit.
This is a good point, Dev. Maybe you can start looking at your definition of what is to have fun and what is to have, a recreational part of our lives. And that's what you were pointing out, as we grow older, things change. But doesn't mean that, we don't want to have fun. I think you can, I would say the walk can be fun.
Yes.
If you're, like you just telling me, you go and you use a walk as a meditation, as a walking meditation.
It is. And it's also like, I'll add to it that, again, that definition is so important, because looking at different decades in my life, my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s type thing, I can go through and think about what things was I doing 30 years ago that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And those things really aren't things I enjoy now. And what am I doing now that I enjoy that I would never dreamed of when I was in my 30s or something, younger? That changed a lot. And some of this may be normal. And I believe that maybe I'm, as you said, caught up in the definition. I'm defining it from my perspective of being much younger, and maybe that's the wrong definition. So this wheel is useful just in terms of thinking about these individual pieces and what they mean today, as opposed to maybe in the past.
Well, I would say that what about thinking about fun is ageless? There's no age to define what fun is. Have you ever thought about that?
I guess, yeah, I do believe that fundamentally. I just think that I tend to pin activities to, like, for example, hey, let's get a bunch of people together. When I hear that phrase, I immediately shut off at this age. I don't want to get a bunch of people together. It just seems stressful. And that's an introvert thing, but it's also, a lot of chaotic activities that used to be cool and exciting. So maybe it's just more balanced now in terms of, more, again, spiritual stuff, meditative, thinking. That stuff I really enjoy now. And I didn't really do that before.
May I share something with you, Dev?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have a guru in India, a teacher, and she always said to me, not because we are spiritual or we're looking for enlightenment, it means that we're going to be boring. The people, she always said, the sages and the wise people in the world were like children. And that's what Jesus in his teaching said, be like the child, be happy, be free. So think about that, because my teacher always told me, because when I was too rigid or too serious, she came to me and she said, what's wrong? And I said, well, I'm focused. I have to meditate. I have to do this. She's like, that doesn't have to be a chore. That had to be joyful.
That's a good point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good way to think.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, and then I actually want to share a couple things.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want, I already talked.
No, go ahead, Joe. Go.
Yeah, no, I love actually the point about joy, and maybe that's part of what this is. And I just would throw out there that maybe you know, you and I have talked, Dave, and we talked a lot about burnout. We talked a lot about careers that, you know, basically did everything for our career, but we didn't really take care of ourselves. And I wonder if recreation and fun, I just throw this as a thought, are the things that you do for yourself. And again, it's alluding to the self-compassion. Now I'm just reading about that and putting that together, but this just so much resonates with this piece of the pie here. Maybe this is an area where you're discovering at this age compared to before, you have some needs for yourself personally that are not being met. And when you do things like going for long walks, which I love, and doing meditation, it's filling that Maslow need, right?
Mhm.
That need for yourself, and it's filling up your soul and your cup that you're not getting anywhere else. Just
That's
throwing it out there as a thought.
Joe. That's a good insight, and I'll add to it a little bit that a thing like a walk, you know, waking up at 5:30 in the morning and going for a 2-hour walk doesn't require any coordination or any other people or scheduled deconfliction or anything. It's just and and I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, we're both military, and you know, you sacrifice a lot. Yourself is never really part of the equation very much. It's always about the mission. It's always about the people that you're in command of. It's all those things. And it's almost awkward sometimes to think in terms of, well, what am I going to do for myself? That's one of the reasons I want to, your class is going to be interesting, because that's something that I think a lot of people do go through life with obligations and demands and everything, and they don't really take time out to smell the roses and also be kind to themselves.
Amazing. Dave, I have one suggestion to share with you, and also one thought I'd like to share too. So I saw you shake your head. Yes, I'm going to share. My suggestion might be, and it sounds like you're kind of already heading down this path, maybe after this class, maybe take this Wheel of Life and change all of the subjects, the different portions, into things that may or may not be fun to you. Just things you do in your daily life that maybe you didn't think of as fun or recreation. Like you said, the walking, meditating, anything else you can think of. Maybe there's not 8 areas. And then rank them. How do they really feel? Do they really resonate with you as something recreational or fun, or is it more just self-care? Is it more in relation to your physical fitness or your spirituality and faith? Just kind of discerning all of these things that you do in your life. Which of them could be fun for you? Which of them are fun for you? And the second thing I want to notice, or want you to notice too, is a lot of this conversation around why recreation and fun might be low for you, right? Because you're going through a transformation. You're maybe basing and comparing this rating to the things you found fun or recreational in your past. But I think also what's important, and I think we've talked about this before, it's important to recognize too the world we're living in today in modern society. When we talk about social media or the things we even share openly with each other, it's always very grandiose, right? And perfect. And I think the way that that's portrayed, especially in social media around recreation and fun, it's a very specific kind of post or very specific kind of share. And so I don't think that that's fun for everyone. And I don't think that those are the only types of fun to be had. So it sounds like there are some areas in your life where you are actually having fun and seeking that recreation. It might just not be normal to label those things as fun or recreation.
Yeah, that's Emily, I appreciate that because that's a good insight. I think that it's back to kind of that categorization of the category and saying, okay, you know, in a given day, what are the things I'm doing? Well, I'm doing a million things, but of those things, which ones could be checked as fun? If you were to say, is this fun? Is this fun? Is this fun? I might find in doing that drill that like 80% of the things I do in a day are actually fun, and I might give that category a higher rating. It's just the social media component and what people think of as an example, like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? And it's like, I read 3 books on spirituality, you know, sitting in my house by myself type thing. And it's like, people look at me like, what's wrong with you? Because that's not their definition of fun, but it's all in the definition. So that's helpful. I wrote that down. That's something I want to look at.
Very cool. I think the one other thing I wanted to share, and you might not be able to answer this right away, it might be something just to take with you to think about. A few people, I think both Joe and Rita mentioned joy. And so that's an emotion tied to fun and recreation, right? What I would encourage you to do is think back to those things you used to define as fun and identify what emotions, maybe aside from joy, that you felt in those times, so that you can recognize when those emotions show up in your regular life and notice, okay, I used to feel this feeling when I was having fun at parties, so I think I'm having fun right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like, if I got this right, it's like correlating, kind of take an old version of myself and compare it to the current version, but look at more of the emotions that were felt with activities more than the activities themselves. Is that, do I have
Exactly. Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
exactly.
think, like, so say for example, I'll just use a crazy example. Like, you go to the Grand Canyon and you're sitting there, the whole joke about, hey, it's beautiful, get back in the car. I told my son that this, like, a few days ago, about, you go and see something and you look at it and you say, that's wonderful, now let's go get some food or whatever. It's like, is that really joy? What is joy? Maybe that's the operative question. It's like, what is it? And then going down a few layers and saying, well, actually, those activities are pretty joyful, but there's also excitement. And so joy and excitement are kind of like cousins. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud a bit, but definitely want to drill on this a little bit because it's interesting.
Very cool. All right, thank you, Dave. Does anyone else have
Thanks.
anything to add or reflect on with Dave's Wheel of Life? All right. I think we have time to do this one more time. If anyone might be interested in sharing with us their Wheel of Life, just raise your hand if you're interested.
I would like to do that if that's possible.
I would love for you to do it, Anna. All right. Just read off to me each section and what you gave it as a rating.
Okay. So I had in friends and finances, I have a 2.
Friends and
no,
finances are 2.
finances. I'm gonna start in finances.
Okay.
I have a 2. In
Okay.
career, I have a 1. In physical environment, I have a 9. A recreational and fun, I have a 4. Spiritual and faith, I have a 9. Family, I have a 6. In physical fitness, I have a 9. In friends, I have a 5. Now, what I was reflecting on with the wheel of life right now is that if I'm being reasonable, like understanding what I'm going through, like if it was a client, like I wouldn't necessarily push, like, what can you do with your finances or your career? Like, I mean, it's a good, like, understanding, but if I want to be like compassionate, I would probably, I don't know, because I just feel like that this can go in both directions. Like, if I understand that I'm going through a change, like life, then the finances and the career part are coming, like, knowing that I'm working through to get in a better place per se. And I guess just that, like, if I was my own coach, I guess I'm coaching myself. I would say probably the recreational and fun would be, and maybe the family would be like my 2 things to address. I don't know, but I mean, I'll let you guys coach.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. You're recognizing that finances and career are rated very low for you. But you also recognize that you're kind of going through a transformation right now, especially around career and finances, right? You're going through the academy to become a professional life coach. And so you're aware that things will likely change for you within the next year. So maybe talking about those things is not as important for you right now because you can see the other side. And that's okay. If you want to focus more on something that's more important to you that you don't see a solution for in this moment, like you mentioned, family and recreation and fun, I think that's a great thing to focus on. Does anyone have anything they want to ask Anna or kind of explore a little bit deeper? And I think one question I would ask is, with family, you rated it at a 5, 6?
Yeah, 6.
So, what I want to know is when you rated this, is it based on the quality of the time you spend with your family or the quantity of time you spend with your family, or is it both?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like if I have a number of people that I would say I would like to have a special relationship with, I would say I have really good relationships with a few of my siblings and maybe 2 or 3 that are just not happening. And that's where like, and maybe like, you were present, and Dave, when I share a specific situation, and I'm coming to kind of make peace with the perspective that I can't force a relationship, even if it's a sibling. And I may be ready, but somebody, the other person is in a different place. And I was just basically hurting myself with the thought of why they're rejecting me. But that would still be just like we saw like this interpretation, or it's I just wouldn't know for sure what it is. I've tried, and so I just have to live with that. So I don't know how much I can make a difference on that, but maybe I can rate it higher if I just focus on the quality of a relationship that I have with the ones that I do have a relationship with. So thinking that I'm actually capable of having like deep like relationships.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Anna. I think what's interesting that you mentioned in the beginning was working towards the acceptance of that situation. And what I'm also hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe as you work towards that acceptance, maybe that acceptance alone can bring that score for family up a bit, when you don't have this situation kind of weighing that down. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Yeah, like not worry too much about that specific situation. I think that makes sense, and that would bring me. I'm kind of like a peacemaker, and so I want to like try to have a good relationship with everyone, and everyone should have a great relationship with everybody else. And sometimes I just have to realize that it's not in my hands, and I just can't change the other side either. And not that I want to judge whether they're right or wrong. They're just in a different place.
Yeah, really interesting, Anna. So with family, it sounds more like it's less about something you need to improve and more about something you need to change your perspective on. And it's not going to happen overnight. We're not just going to change the way you feel about these certain relationships by becoming aware of that, but having that awareness will inform sort of how you move forward. And I would encourage you to do this wheel again in a month or 2 months and see where family fits in, once you've kind of worked on that a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. This is really interesting, and I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share this. One thing I think is that I think that you're very open and honest from what I can tell here because, frankly, I'm kind of more homogeneous, but I'm probably lying to myself a little bit. But when I do my wheel, but yours, I get the sense this is truly how you feel about yourself. And I wonder, with your relationships, that sort of surprises me. I don't know you all that well, but I know you well enough that I get a sense that you can be a very empathic person. So I think it's really interesting to explore the relationships which you just talked about so intently. And, why do you feel that you should score yourself so low on that? Do you have is there a self-esteem problem, something like that? Nothing that we're going to solve now, but just kind of things that come through my head. And then the other thing is I'm really interested in the high scoring areas, physical fitness, spirituality, faith, and physical environment. What is up with that? What makes those so high? Where's the energy coming from for that? I think it's intensely interesting. And maybe there's something that could be leveraged there to help flow into those other areas that you may feel like that you're struggling with. I don't know. How do you respond to that?
Yeah. Um, to respond to your first question, that observation, that's very interesting because we have this conversation with Dave, and um, I think I took very seriously a role that it was given to me from my mom. And part of that was not just the responsibility of raising his children, but also I think I took it as we're talking. I took it as the whole thing. Like my mom would always have like, you all have to get along, and my mom has Alzheimer and has been like out of awareness for like 15 years. And I just think at this moment, like I was taking that very seriously. Like, we all have to be good to each other. And it's not my job anymore. Like I'm trying to peel off of these beliefs that because I'm older than, or more like invested and reasonable than everybody else, like it's on me. And I think that after we have this coaching sessions, it was like I want to focus on individual relationships. Like I'm like I can't have everyone in the same room and feel like the responsibility of not, like, I can be with everybody, but I can be responsible for how they feel about me or how they feel about, because I exercised a role when they were younger that wasn't for me to take. Like I'm not their mom. And so, just seeing it from that perspective. And the other question was about the spirituality. I have always been, I think that my faith has always carried me through all the situations that I have gone through. So that's kind of like, I feel like blessed that I went to a private school with nuns. So I'm so thankful that I had that part of my life. Um, and I think that the physical, the fitness and the physical environment. I have a 9-year-old. I'm 55, and I have to feel like a 35 because she just keeps me going. And so to be honest, I would say that she's my motivation. So I just have to, like, not have to, but like I found ways to just enjoy. She's taking her physical activities, and then I just go along with it, you know? So, but it's very interesting because this morning I had a group session therapy, and we talk about all, you know, in all the bad things, I haven't focused on all the good things that I've had. And so this helps me to just realize also that even though sometimes it's hard to see like hope, like my life is just really not that messy.
Very cool. And I actually, with something you mentioned, that you enjoy the physical fitness aspect, I'm wondering how similar maybe your rating for recreation and fun is sort of to like Dave's situation. With recreation and fun, it sounds almost like that physical fitness is something you enjoy doing. And I'm curious to know, with recreation and fun, do you have a definition for what recreation and fun looks and feels like for you, or are you feeling like you're also in a place where that's sort of being redefined?
No, actually, that was someone told me like, oh, you need to do something like focus on what you like and on something fun. And then I'm like, yeah, I work out and I'm pretty active. I like, you know, I enjoy like running and working out and, you know, playing golf or whatever comes, you know, and they're like, no, but that's not like a fun, like something for you. And well, that was for me, but it kind of like twisted kind of what I thought, maybe what Dave was saying. I was thinking more of the social part, which I don't get much because I have a child. Although when I do it, I still like it, and I love having fun. You know, the Latin spirit. So like I have no problem going and dancing or you know, I just enjoy that. I just can't do it right now as much as I would like. But that's a good point too. If I can say that, because even the exercises, I always do it with like more people, so it's always a fun thing to do.
Yeah, so it sounds like this recreation and fun rating you gave might have been largely affected by sort of an outside opinion.
Right.
So I would actually like to challenge that rating, Anna. Like, given this new insight, what might you actually rate recreation and fun for yourself without any inside or outside observation?
I would probably just like put it up to 9 also. I mean, 8 or 9. I would like to put more like maybe a movie night or, you know, like that kind of stuff that probably more like alone time. And I'm not saying that, you know, my daughter is on the way, but I just like to be a very present parent. So.
Okay, that's a huge jump, right? Like to rate yourself with fun and recreation out of 4, and then to realize that rating is largely based on someone else's opinion. And when you take that opinion out and rate yourself as a 9, that's huge. That's really, really big, Anna. So props to you for recognizing that and letting me challenge you a little bit.
Thank you.
I would even challenge friends a little bit, and we don't have to do this right now, right? But you mentioned when you do your physical fitness, it's with a group of people and it's a bit more social, and maybe they're not like all your best friends, but it is sort of a social interaction for you, it sounds like. So you might even write friends a little bit higher based on that. So very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to ask or share with Anna? All right, Anna, how do you feel after going through that?
Pretty good. Like, and good energy.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, some big shifts, and I think it's important to recognize that just having this visual, again, this is what makes the Wheel of Life so powerful. Having the visual allows us to really kind of go down each individual alleyway and discover, why did I give it that rating? And in your case, Anna, huge shifts just in recognizing what impacted those ratings. So very, very cool.
Thank you.
All right. So does anyone have, I'm going to stop sharing. Does anyone have any questions, anything they want to share from this this session in general?
When do you like to bring this model or exercise into your coaching sessions, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on the client or maybe your own specific coaching style. I think ultimately the Wheel of Life, again, like I said, it's a great thing to do time and time again. But in terms of like at the beginning of a coaching relationship, I would say maybe not the very first session, but maybe the second or third session, especially if you're noticing patterns of imbalance. And sort of like you're maybe catching on to patterns that your client has yet to see. That's a great time to pull out the Wheel of Life. And like I said, maybe again in a month or in 2 months. You know, like if you're doing a 3-month contract with someone, maybe you do it twice over that 3 months, sort of at the beginning and at the end. Dave?
Yeah, Emily, you said something earlier about quantity versus quality. And I was just kind of thinking about that. In a category like, say, family, and you know, if you think in terms of the whole family, you know, however many people that is, you know, 20 people, 100 people, and the average score is, you know, 6 or something as far as relationships, but some of the people are a 9 or a 10. And it's with a client, it seems like if they say, well, hey, my family rating is low, it's like, well, are there family members that you're super close to? And it's like, oh, absolutely, I'm close to this person and this person. Okay, if you were only going to rate that category based on those 2 or 3 people, what would you give it? Well, I'd give it a 9 or a 10. And that methodology could be used across all the categories. It's like a concentration of positive within the category itself, as opposed to broadly giving it a score.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as you use this for yourselves or you use it for your clients, this can be tailored to meet anyone's needs, however you see fit. And I think it's really cool, Dave, right? Like I was talking about quality of time spent with family or quantity of time spent with family. And you actually took it even a step further to like, well, let's look at the individual family members. And then it goes even further into that, right? Like, okay, the people you maybe rated lower, do you feel called to have a better relationship with them, or maybe you don't? And so I think as you break it down, the more and more you break it down, the more clear things are going to get, right?
Yeah, and Emily, I agree, and I was going to add to that. I think if you were to do a session with a client with the original 8 categories, and then they rate one of them low, and you pull that one out, and you have another wheel, and it's these are the 8 categories of that category. That's kind of where my mind's going. It's like all right, well, actually looking at it that way, these 5 things are positive and these 3 things aren't as much. And then re-looking at the original wheel and saying, I think I'd give myself a higher score or a lower score. But maybe it's just an initial gut reaction when you think about a category as you define it, whatever that is. Everybody's different. But like, you know, hey, I'm giving myself a 4 or whatever, but it's like, actually, if you look at the category itself, that number might go up a lot. And I think that's my takeaway from tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dave. Joe?
Yeah, I think this is a great exercise that I love the idea of doing it more than once, because I think everybody calibrates it differently. But if you compare it to yourself, that's when it's probably the most useful in going like you did with Emily, with Anna. I think thinking about what are the elements that could get you from a 4 to a 6 or to a 9, and you already made that leap by kind of bringing some awareness as to what are some of the things that could actually feed into that category. I was thinking, like with family, that's so complicated because you can have a great loving relationship with one person, but have troubling relationships or non-relationships with other people, and that might, I wonder how that really kind of translates into a score or a level for that wheel. I mean, Anna's example is great. She has a loving daughter relationship that might cause family to go higher, but she chose to rate it relatively low, I guess, as the average for the whole group. I don't want to put Anne on the spot for that, but I just wonder how people sort of interpret it. If you have one relationship or a couple of relationships, but you have so many other family members, how do they figure into the equation? So.
Yeah, really cool. And I think something I thought of as you were speaking, Joe, is just like every other category, I think everyone will have a different definition for what family is, right? Some people might see it as like your mom, your dad, your siblings, your children. Other people might include like very close friends, lifelong friends, into that category, separate from the actual friend category. So I think it really just depends on how your client or how you specifically define those categories. And, for super complicated familial relationships as a whole, I would actually, I really love what Dave suggested, his approach to kind of break it down even further and maybe see how many of those relationships really matter to you, how many of them would you really care to improve? And then based off of that, what is the real overall rating for family? Yeah, Jim.
Emily, I'm looking at the handbook. And in the instructions for using this exercise, the follow-up asks for each of the categories, if it was a 10, what 3 things would be happening? As I reflected on that question, it occurred to me that it possibly could be 1 or 2 things that you are currently doing would be highlighted more, or there'd be more presence of it. It's not that it would necessarily be different all around. So again, taking Dave's suggestion of breaking it down into smaller categories, 1 or 2 or maybe all 3 of the things that might be happening if this was a 10 were already present, just not giving it as much attention as maybe I want to in that moment. And then in the instructions on each category, it says, how fulfilled are you in regard to this? I hadn't put that word together in the instructions that you gave us, or if you said it, I missed it altogether. But that notion of being fulfilled was how to look at the category.
Yeah. I think the language I used, Jim, actually was satisfied or not satisfied.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think the word fulfillment really brings it into a higher perspective. So I'm glad you shared that. And, I think the terminology that you guys might use with your clients will vary, just like the interpretation of the subcategories themselves. But I do really like using the word fulfillment, like how fulfilled or unfulfilled are you with each category? Thank you, Jim. Marita?
So since I was thinking, Dave, you're saying, different categories. What about creating a wheel of life just for that? Like a specific. You just go and create one wheel and you deal with, and so that you can look, Dave, more clear at the different categories, like you were saying. And the pipe can be different. Doesn't have to be 8. It can be 4, it can be 5, or it can be 6, or whatever works with you. But you can look at a little more in depth.
Yeah, Marita, I was going to say, I agree with that, because the idea is you kind of look at that general category and you go, okay, fitness and health. All right, well, that's a whatever, X. And then you say, well, what are the components of that? Like cardiovascular health and, whatever, like walking, exercising, swimming, it's like you break it down into different things, bike riding, and then go, well, actually, if you look at it that way, I'm pretty happy. And Jim, to your point, fulfilled in 5 of these 6 categories or whatever the number is. And therefore I'm giving this thing a 5 and I should give it a 9. And it's and this is, I think, the big kind of epiphany. It's like, for me, it's like the perspective change, because you're looking at the information differently.
Correct.
Great.
Very cool. All right, I've really enjoyed this session with you all, and it's kind of a shame it has to come to an end here in a few minutes. I want to make sure we have time to share our takeaways and our words of the day. And I also want to invite our new people here in the community because welcome, you're part of the community now that you've been here for one single session. That's how we like to do it. I'd really like to talk to you one-on-one, get to know you, get to understand how I can support you. The Clarity Call schedule is to me this week and this week only. So if you'd like to talk with me, please book a call. Sana will share the link in the chat to do that. So yeah, let's go around and share our word of the day and a takeaway. Marita, do you want to go first?
Okay, so for me it was perspective, yeah? Hard to see, sorry. I think it was very interesting, Dave, to see, how you start seeing things from different points of view. So thank you so much. Emily, great class.
Thank you, Marita.
I'll say my word's also perspective. It's really just about how you perceive each thing in your section of the wheel. So thank you for tonight.
Of course, thank you for being here. Jim?
I'll say reflection. I approached this in this moment today, perhaps too quickly. And I didn't take even a moment to reflect. I just went, oh, score. And I really needed to take more time to reflect on each subject and perhaps be more honest with myself in responding. Thank you
Very
for
cool.
saying that was
Yeah.
great, Emily.
Thanks, Jim. Terry?
My word is power. Is how much power each of these categories has in our life, in our well-being, to make us feel like a rounded person, like a complete person, and how different it is, the perspective that we have in each of these categories, just to see how much satisfaction we have in an area, and maybe not related to a specific event, but to a general point of view.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I think my word is depth. And the reason for that is as we go through the exercise, you do that first pass on the wheel, digging into those categories a little bit more and micro analyzing components of it and going back to the original wheel. The deeper you go into it, the more you understand how these variables relate to each other. So Emily, really, really good class, very thought provoking and just an awesome all around class.
Thank you, Dave. Anna? We'll come back to Anna. She might be busy. Joe?
Oops. Okay, I am off mute. My word is thriving, and I say that because that sort of strikes me in my mind is another word that is maybe not exactly equal to fulfillment, but it is kind of the epitome of fulfillment. If you feel like you're thriving in an area, I think you're getting the most out of it, and that would be a 10. So that kind of popped in my mind.
Very cool. Anna?
Sorry, I just get confused with those little buttons. Mine would be, it's all about perspective. Like it just, seeing things with different ways, not just one way. And it just changed completely how I feel about it.
Absolutely. Jan?
I think it's still going back with two words, but it would be self-introspection. And what I wanted to point out, I have one client who her husband died. She's had not too recently, but she's even before this, for the last 2 years, she won't come out of her house. She reads one book per year. And when I ask her, is that what your friends and neighbors are doing? She said, oh yeah, she thinks everybody does the same thing. But I think I'd like to use this as something for her to measure which area she thinks she's covering and how she's covering it, just to give her a better look. Because it also gives me a look, because if I have a particular anti-sports idea, and that's who I am, I'm likely to think that the client should be less sports-minded. So understanding me helps me keep from being biased in one direction or another. So I really like the exercise. Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for sharing that, Jan. It's almost like you might have your own perspective on what's important and what's not, and that sometimes can filter into the work we do with others. So doing this Wheel of Life really defines that for the person in front of you, right? Very cool. Eve?
It's really great to see different comments from different perspectives and different reactions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Doretha?
Yes, the word that comes to me is insight. How much we can learn about ourselves and each other by not stopping at the outside, just what's on the surface, but going deeper and also listening to yourself so that you know what you're thinking and feeling and saying is genuine and not just rattling off. So I was really encouraged to think about that for myself and use that insight to be more capable of helping someone else use it.
Very cool. Thank you, Doretha. Patricia? We'll see if she's able to pop off mute. My word tonight is balance. I really like to engage in these kinds of conversations with you all. I'm really grateful, Dave and Anna, for you being willing to share with us, and everyone here who participated in sort of coaching around each person's wheel. So thank you so much for that participation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking part in this. A final invitation to our guests tonight: book a clarity call with me if you're interested in getting to know each other and finding out how I and ILCAID as a team can support you best. The last final thing is there's a link in the chat that Sana shared for our Elevate membership. It's a new weekly membership. Currently, we have a $4 offer for your first month. So there's very minimal risk to join us, see what we're all about, get into this community with the rest of these amazing people here tonight. And we'd love to welcome you there. So check the link in the chat and we hope to see you there. Jan?
I have one question. It said that they were having people make contact with each other or do sessions with each other on Wednesday, but I couldn't understand where that was happening.
I'll reach out to you privately, Jan, afterwards, okay?
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Hope to see you all in our community moving forward. Namaste. My final thing I have to say is see you later, alligators.
All right.